Hey, Flawed Guy here. Just wanted to say hi to everybody and happy Thanksgiving, or hope y'all had a happy Thanksgiving. Um, Said I would start a series of videos on the book of Daniel and, parts of Revelation. Excited to kind of get into it. Just wanted to start off saying, first of all, I am not a pastor. I am not a historian, even though I like, you know, ancient history, and um, but I've never majored in history or anything of that nature. I've studied and read the Bible, you know, for years, but others have done much more extensive study than myself. So this is kind of just a video to help those that it can help, from someone such as myself who just a flawed person who uh, is a Christian and has to confess his sins all the time to God and striving to be what to live the way God wants us to live, or to let God live through me the best way that I can let Him do so. So these series of videos and every subsequent video is with that heart in mind, so that people somewhere, Christian or non-Christian, can be benefited and helped by these videos. So, this particular video, I want to go over a little bit of the book of Daniel. I've heard it, different studies from different pastors over many years, different takes on some of the prophetic meanings in the book. And there are differences in opinion from pastors and teachers about some of the things in these passages that I'm going to get into with you guys. And it's not something that we need to fight over as Christians. We can talk about it and get excited about it and come to our own conclusions about, what we feel is the prophetic meanings in all this. I'm going to do my best to show, just with nothing but the Bible, why I believe that what I'm going to try to show is, what I believe to be the way, you know, the Bible's trying to impart knowledge to us. But none of us can have total understanding. God shows us different things at different times through His Word. But the doctrinal truths about salvation and repentance from sin and baptisms and things of that nature taught in the Bible uh, aren't something that can be uh, argued about. Those are clear, and we need to adhere to those as Christians. The virgin birth and God's rising from the dead, and you know, our salvation is through faith and in Christ and things of that nature. So that being said, I hope this can help somehow some folks. I know in my studies of it, it helped me to understand what I feel to be, you know, Bible prophecy and what we're seeing. I've been following this stuff since I was a kid, and I've heard different takes on it. But hopefully it'll help some people who don't know gain some insight, and maybe get people to want to research the Bible more and delve into the Bible for themselves. And that's always a good thing. So, without further ado, I just wanted to kind of give on this first video about Daniel, the book of Daniel in the Bible and Revelation, just kind of an outline. I just kind of sketched it out. So pardon me if I read it a little bit. Uh, some of it's just kind of off the cuff too, but just kind of go with me on that and pray for me. um, but I wanted to help people understand that there are several dreams as contained in the book of Daniel that are prophetic dreams, and you know the interpretations of those dreams um, as it relates to modern times and Bible prophecy is kind of what I'm hoping to help clarify for some people. Um, a little bit of background about the book of Daniel. Again, I'm not a historian. You can delve into these figures. They may, some people may differ by several years of what, I'm giving here. But for instance, the book of Daniel was written in Babylon while Daniel, who was from Judah in ancient times in what was like the boundaries of ancient Israel, the from Judah, the southern kingdom or whatever. He was a captive and taken to Babylon, and it was around the time frame anywhere from 616 BC to about 536 BC, according to what I have studied. Again, that may differ with some of you guys, which you may look up. It was concerning the time of the Babylonian Empire, especially during the time and reign of King Nebuchadnezzar, who a lot of the book of Daniel deals with. I wanted to give a little bit of biblical background about the kingdom of Babylon. Again, it comes from the word Babel. So I'm going to just read a little few passages in Genesis 10, which you're welcome to follow through. And I'm starting in verse 1, and it says, "Now these are the generations of the sons of Noah." So after the flood, for those of you who don't know, in the Bible, there was a worldwide flood. God spared a man named Noah and his family. He had three sons and some and their wives. Through them, the modern day peoples that we have on the planet now, all sprang from this family group of about 8 people after the flood. Uh, and it goes on to say in these passages, the sons of Noah were Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and unto them were sons born after the flood. Now it says the sons of Japheth, Gomer, Magog, or Magog, Madai, Javan, Tubal, Meshech, and Tiras. And the sons of Gomer, Ashkenaz, Rephath, Togarmah. And the sons of Javan, Elisha, Tarshish, Kittim, and Dodanim. And by these were the isles of the Gentiles divided in their lands, everyone after his tongue, after their families, and in their nations. And this is something I wanted y'all to pay particularly closer attention to. Some videos back, I spoke about how the earth was one landmass. The people all spoke one language. And, after the flood, when God flooded the world, the ark settled on the mountains of Ararat, which is like modern day Turkey near Armenia and whatnot. And these people groups descended down and kind of settled in the Mesopotamian region. They call in the Bible like the land of Shinar. And it's between it's in the Tigris Euphrates Valley. So y'all can look that up for you guys who might not know where that is. This is basically like modern day parts of Syria and Iraq. And it says in this passage, Genesis 10, verse 6, the sons of Ham were Cush, Mizraim, Phut, and Canaan. And the sons of Cush were Seba, Havilah, Sabta, Reamah, Sabtekah. The sons of Reamah, Sheba, and Dedan. My pronunciation is what it is, so I might not know the exact way to pronounce some of these names. But what's interesting is it goes on to say in verse 8, Genesis 10, and Cush begat Nimrod, and he began to be a mighty one in the earth. And he was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Wherefore it is said, even as Nimrod, the mighty hunter before the Lord. And it goes on to say in verse 10, and the beginning of his kingdom was Babel, which means confusion, or the Babylonian Empire. Babel comes from this word. And what's interesting is if you go back to the prior video, basically Nimrod, which is another study, founded all the false religions of the world we have today, all the idolatry and idolatrous practices of all people groups on the planet that would steer people away from the truth of the Bible and the God of the Bible, and subsequently in the New Testament, away from Jesus and his words regarding what truth is, all emanated from its beginnings after the flood in the land of Shinar in the Mesopotamian region between the Tigris and Euphrates River by this Nimrod, and uh, where he set up a ziggurat, basically, or the Tower of Babel, for those of you who know the story, and set up the false religion there. And I went over that in my pyramids videos, why all the pyramids. And so, if you understand that all the world's false religions emanated from there and spread into various parts of the globe later, after God scattered people groups across the land masses, Egypt was a big repository, if I can use that word, of the globalist one world religion uh, later after Babylon. And so this particular, all the idolatrous practices and false religions of the world basically have been carried on for centuries, even into modern times, because of what was started in this area in ancient times by Nimrod. And we can go into all the details of some of what he set up. But that's what I wanted you to know. Just have some background that the beginning of Babylon has connections with Babel and the Tower of Babel and the whole story there about false religion. And I'll just call that what I call the ancient mystic Babylonian cult religion, which is like the mother of all false religions and idolatrous practices that the world has ever experienced. Um, and what's interesting is it says after that verse about um, Nimrod, it says in the beginning of his kingdom was Babel and Erech and Akkad. I specifically say that because Akkad is where we get the word or the term Akkadians or Akkadians. And that was like a people group in that same region of Mesopotamia, like after the Sumerian, empire was started. And the people spoke that kind of language, the Akkadian or Akkadian language, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. And then that basically split into the Assyrian Empire and what would be the Southern Empire, which would later become the Babylonian Empire. And even the Assyrians, or the forebears of them, are mentioned in the Genesis 11 or chapter 10, verse 11. It says, "And out of that land went forth Ashur and builded Nineveh and the city of Rehoboth and Calah." So that's where we get the modern term, or when we use the word Assyrians, it's derived from Ashur and those people who settled in that region of Mesopotamia. So that's all I wanted to say there. It's a little background. The book of Daniel was written in the ancient kingdom of Babylon, um, over there in what is now modern day Iraq, between the Tigris Euphrates River Valley area. And that was a descendant of Ham, one of the sons of Noah. And that all ties in with the fact that these empires that emanated from there, for instance, the Assyrians and Egypt and um, Babylon, and as we'll see, subsequent world empires that emanated from this area of the world after the flood, coinciding with a mystical cult religion and idolatrous practices steering the hearts of men of the time. And ever since then, from way back in history, uh, it has its origins over there. And those empires all persecuted who the Bible calls, the Israelites, which were people group that God had chosen to take his words and to take them to the rest of the world. And that was his command for those people. And they were to, tell the world about how they had gotten caught up in these idolatrous practices. And they were supposed to shed the light of God abroad in the hearts of men. And well, they too got caught up in the idolatrous practices of this cult religion in its various forms. So as we'll see, it ties in these kingdoms like Babylon and Assyria tie into Bible prophecy as it's related to us in the book of Daniel and Revelation. And um, I just wanted to show you how that Nimrod, Babel was the beginning of his kingdom, and in that same area, the Akkadians and the Assyrians all came from that area. And as we'll see in the future through these studies, I hope that there is a future antichrist or world leader who will arise on this planet. And I believe, it is my firm belief, and what I hope to show in subsequent studies, is that he emanates from this region as well. And in fact, his future capital will be originally emanating and around the area of Babylon, the actual ancient city, and will become a modern, vibrant city, which in fact, in our day, modern times, is being rebuilt, was being rebuilt by Saddam Hussein. And it can be a very great commercial center, as the Bible declares it will be in the book of Revelation in the latter times. So I hope to get into that later. But for now, um, just know that the city of Babylon is basically in the southern end of the Mesopotamian region of, you know, of the Babylonian Empire, southern Iraq, basically. And I hope to show through the prophetic dreams in the book of Daniel how this all ties together. So, first, I want to concentrate on the three dreams listed in the book of Daniel. And I believe two of them are concerning Nebuchadnezzar, who had the dreams, and one from Daniel. I want to show how they're interrelated and how it depicts uh, these world empires that we've spoken of, and how they've basically oppressed Israel and have come against, the people God had chosen to disseminate the truth of His word, through the prophets and things as named in the Bible, and through His word and to the world, um, and how these dreams also predict a future empire that will possibly be formed, maybe even in our own lifetimes presently. Um, and these future empires yet to come, as we'll find out in these studies, will oppress Israel in what is called in the Bible in the time of the tribulation. Um, so, first, I would just like to start by delving into the dreams and the interpretations of the dreams, and just kind of read them from Scripture as written in the Bible in the book of Daniel. And I'll start with Daniel chapter 2. So, if you'll bear with me while I just click over to that. For those of you, again, who have eSword, it's great to study and use that source to help look this stuff up. But let's see, I'm going to try to start. Let's see, the best place to start. The king Nebuchadnezzar, who was a ruler in ancient Babylon from that time frame I told you, um, he had a dream, and he couldn't remember the dream, or if he did, he wanted to see if the ancient astrologers and soothsayers and magicians could interpret the dream. And he didn't want any of them pulling the wool over his eyes, so he didn't tell them what the dream was and wasn't going to. And he wanted to know the interpretation and didn't want them basically making up stuff. So he threatened to kill these people if they didn't tell him, what the interpretation was. And Daniel, who was one of the um, basically Jewish young men who was taken captive to Babylon and basically trained up in the king's court, he loved God and served the God of the Bible and not the pagan gods of the time. And he basically declared that God was the interpreter of these dreams and not really himself. And he actually ended up going to the king, even though he was brought up in, you know, there. He ended up being in the king's court because he interpreted these dreams and such. Um, he was the one who God used to reveal what the king's dream was. And so I just want to try to start at that particular part of the story. You're free to read the book of Daniel and get up to chapter 2 and just kind of read where I'm talking about. But basically, the part I want to concentrate on is when Daniel interpreted the dream for King Nebuchadnezzar. Um, and I'll start at Daniel 2 31. It says, "Thou, O king, sawest, and behold, a great image. This great image, whose brightness was excellent, stood before thee, and the form thereof was terrible. The This image's head was of fine gold, his breast and his arms of silver, his belly and thighs of brass, his legs of iron, and his feet part of iron and part of clay. Thou sawest till that a stone was cut out without hands, which smote the image upon his feet that were of iron and clay, and broke them to pieces. Then was the iron, the clay, the brass, the silver, and the gold broken to pieces together, and became like the chaff of the summer threshing floors. And the wind carried them away, that no place was found for them. And the stone that smote the image became a great mountain and filled the whole earth." Okay. So that was the dream that King Nebuchadnezzar had. And hopefully, I'm provide a picture of this image and what people have, put together to kind of illustrate what that might have looked like in the king's mind. Okay. The dreams are so much more vivid and so much lifelike. It's like another world inside our imaginations and our hearts when we're up on our bed at night. But you know, we'll give you a illustration of the basic principles of that, which is the head of gold and so on. And it says, "Thou art king, art a king of kings, for the God of heaven has given thee a kingdom, power, and strength, and glory. And wheresoever the children of men dwell, the beasts of the field and the fowls of heaven he has given into your hand, and has made thee ruler over them all. Thou art this head of gold." Okay? So, "And after thee shall arise another kingdom, inferior to thee, and another third kingdom of brass, which shall bear rule over all the earth. And the fourth kingdom shall be as strong as iron, for as much as iron breaketh in pieces and subdues all things, and as iron that breaks all these shall it break in pieces and bruise. And whereas thou sawest the feet and toes part of potter's clay and part of iron, the kingdom shall be divided, but there shall be in it the strength of the iron, for as much as thou sawest the iron mixed with the miry clay. And as the toes and the feet were part of iron, part of clay, the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly broken. And whereas thou sawest iron mixed with miry clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men, but they shall not cleave one to another, even as iron is not mixed with the clay. And in the days of these kings shall the God of heaven set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed, and and the kingdom shall not be left to other people, but it shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever. For as much as thou sawest the stone that was cut out of the mountain without hands, and that it broke in pieces the iron, the brass, the clay, the silver, and the gold, the great God has made known to the king what shall come to pass hereafter, and the dream is certain, and the interpretation is sure." So that was the first dream that I wanted you to concern yourselves with, and the subsequent, diagram or pictures of what people have, drawn to show and illustrate, the succession of these kingdoms. God basically gave Daniel the interpretation and said there are going to be world empires on the earth, and that as far as the dream is concerned, the head or the gold on the figure was Nebuchadnezzar's kingdom, or the kingdom of Babylon, of which we've just spoken of briefly. And what I hope to show is there is another dream in chapter 7 of Daniel. Okay. And I want to read that passage. And there are those, you know, who will show that, like the figure in the of the man with the gold head and the arms of silver and the brass and so on and so forth, that is depicting, as was the interpretation we just read, kingdoms that would succeed each other throughout Earth's history, culminating with a future kingdom as represented by, which we'll go over later, the 10 toes. And we'll get into those later. But for now, we'll just concern ourselves with the head of gold. Okay, but we know that a subsequent kingdom will come after that. And we also know that the head of gold, Daniel told Nebuchadnezzar, that represents you in the kingdom of Babylon, the gold. And what I want to do is skip over to um, Daniel chapter 7, and it talks about a vision of four beasts. Okay, so let's read that. In the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel had a dream and visions of his head upon his bed, and he wrote the dream and told the sum of the matters. Daniel spoke and said, I saw my vision by night, and behold, the four winds of the heavens strove upon the great sea. Now, most people interpret the great sea to be the sea of the people groups of the nations and peoples of the earth. Can you imagine, like, when you're at a concert and you hear all the people in one accord, chanting, or, a great gathering of people and they're shouting, and it sounds almost like the roaring and waves of the undulating waves of the sea. And so, and four great beasts came from the sea. So basically, from the peoples of the earth, four beasts came up, which we'll discuss as being empires, just like in the previous dream interpretation. But let's just keep reading. Four great beasts came up from the sea, diverse one from another. The first was like a lion and had eagle's wings. I beheld till the wings thereof were plucked, and it was lifted up from the earth and made to stand upon the feet as a man, and a man's heart was given to it. And behold, another beast, a second, like a bear, and it raised up itself on one side, and it had three ribs in the mouth of it, between the teeth of it. And they said thus unto it, Arise and devour much flesh. After this I beheld, and lo, another, like a leopard, which had upon the back of it four wings of a fowl. The beast had four heads, and dominion was given to it. Okay. And after this I saw in the night visions, behold, a fourth beast, dreadful and terrible, and strong exceedingly, and it had great iron teeth, and it devoured, broke in pieces, and stamped the residue with the feet of it. And it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. And I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another little horn, before whom there were three of the first horns plucked up by the roots. And behold, in this horn were eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking great things. And I beheld till the thrones were cast down, and the Ancient of Days did sit, whose garment was white as snow, and the hair of his head was like pure wool. His throne was like the fiery flame, and his wheels as burning fire. A fiery stream issued and came forth from before him. Thousands of thousands, thousands ministered unto him, and 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him, and the judgment was set, and the books were opened. Okay, and I beheld then, because of the voice of the great words which the horn spake, I beheld till the beast was slain, and his body destroyed, and given to the burning flame. As concerning the rest of the beasts, they had their dominion taken away, yet their lives were prolonged for a season and a time. So that dream that Daniel had concerning these four beasts, I would like to compare and or contrast to the image talked about in the first dream that Nebuchadnezzar had, of the image of the gold and the brass and the silver and whatever, the iron, and the feet with iron and clay. And I want to compare that and and the interpretation of it being empires of the earth and a yet future empire that is yet to come, of which the Antichrist will gain control over during the tribulation, possibly even in our lifetime. Probable. And I want to show how that's also illustrated in the interpretation of the four beasts as being empires and being subsequent empires that also are basically tying in with that other figure, and how they also show the future empire under Antichrist, which will again persecute Israel in these latter days, which I believe we're living in. And that's what I hope to show. And I hope to show it through a third dream, which I will go back over in the book of Daniel. But for now, if you would, for this study, just familiarize yourself with Daniel chapter 2 and Nebuchadnezzar's dream, and go to chapter 7 and study up on the dream of Daniel about the beasts. And then what I hope to do is show, hopefully with pretty conclusive evidence from the Bible, that the gold head, as in the first dream from Nebuchadnezzar, being the kingdom of Babylon, is also the first beast as mentioned in Daniel 7, where it was described as like a lion, having eagle's wings, wings which were later plucked. And then the beast was lifted up from the earth, made to stand up like a man, and a man's heart was given to it. So just kind of dwell on that. I just want to take them in succession. There are those who believe and teach, and it's okay, that it's possible that these beasts could be some modern country or some modern uh, empire, such as, or relatively contemporary, such as the British Empire and possibly America. I don't adhere to that. I guess I would fall into the old school frame of thought, but even some of those folks who fall into that category that believe as I do that the image in Nebuchadnezzar's dream and the beast in Daniel's dream are one and the same, and that they represent successive empires, don't always have a clear understanding. And that's what I hope to kind of bring to light to folks through the next subsequent videos. So for now, again, the overview was, let's go over the head of gold, which is Babylon and Nebuchadnezzar, okay? And that's what the interpretation was in the first dream. And compare that to the first beast of Daniel's dream, and how we can make a comparison of these neat things that we learn about that first beast, like a lion. What does that mean? Having eagle's wings. What does that mean? The wings were plucked, and it was lifted up from the earth, and a man, and made to stand upon its feet like a man, and a man's heart was given to it. That's what I hope to get into, and we'll give some good scriptural references for that, and we'll compare those two, the images of the beast and the image of the, basically the statue made out of the various metals. And we'll talk about that empire being Babylon, and how that first beast is basically Babylon, and how Nebuchadnezzar ties in with that as well. And that, as I will hope to show, it is not, not that it couldn't be, but I just feel like with what we're going to go over, we will have confidence in knowing that that beast in the one dream is basically Babylon and Nebuchadnezzar, and shown conclusively that it is one of the empires that basically persecuted Israel and has persecuted Israel as they were taken captive to Babylon. And then we'll study the next section of the image in the first dream and compare it to the second beast in the other dream after this. So next week, I hope you look forward to coming back, or in a few days. I'll start with the head of gold and that other beast, and we'll give some scripture references and compare, contrast, and also have some pictures to show to kind of give some graphic some pictures to kind of show what we're talking about, from examples from ancient history and things of that nature. So I think you'll find it interesting, even some modern day things that even have to do with like Saddam Hussein and people like that tie in with Babylon. And then we'll also get into also some other references later in the book of Revelation. But for now, just read Daniel chapter 2 and read Daniel chapter 7 and familiarize yourself with those dreams, and be prepared to go over the head of gold and the first beast in the next video. Hopefully this will be cool and y'all enjoy it, and appreciate y'all listening. Thanks.